the Baddie is going to get whipped by Tony Ferguson. Now, this match kind of caught me off guard, I must tell you. And the internet exploded, as the kids say. But it really did. A lot of people reacted to this fight. And there was just a couple of thoughts, which is, first off, that Tony Ferguson got another fight. And I'm a Tony supporter. If Tony wants another fight, there's a part where you go, hey, that's great. I'm happy for him. And there's another side when you bring in the old to compete against the new, where the expectation is rather obvious. So it's a very interesting position, though. Look, Tony Ferguson's a tough night for anybody. And Tony only has fought real killers. I mean, these guys that have got the nudge on Tony are the best of the best. Tony Ferguson, until just recently, has been ranked in the top 10 for his entire career. I mean, as far back as you can remember Tony Ferguson being a 55-pounder, he's been ranked in the top 10 until he just lost that fight to Bobby Green. And the point on that is, Bobby Green was his sixth loss in a row. His sixth loss in a row, but he was still ranked in the top 10. He lost 5 fights in a row. He's still in the top 10. I'm just speaking to the caliber opponent that he's taken on. Tony Ferguson is the one that gave Justin Gaethje an opportunity. Tony Ferguson is the one that created Charles Oliveira. I mean, no part of the Charles Oliveira story, getting to main events and getting to championship opportunities, no part of that exists without Tony Ferguson. So, I know what I'm looking at as much as you guys do, right? You can see when a guy's time is past, but you're still juxtaposing that against a guy's time who's never arrived. Paddy the Baddie has never arrived. It's a matter that Tony just slid out of the top 10. Paddy the Baddie's never been in the top 10, never even threatened to be in the top 10. When Tony Ferguson left the top 10, it was very arguable. Does a loss to Bobby Green mean that you're no longer in the top 10? Paddy has not done anything to ever argue that he could be in the top 10. I'm not giving Paddy a hard time, by the way. I look at it very, very differently. I look at Paddy with some real positivity, but I also look at a guy that can't get his weight under control. I look at a guy that every time he goes on social media or Instagram or does some kind of a podcast with Barstool, the only comments have to do with how big he is, which is a direct contradiction to discipline and efforts being put into the gym. They don't go together. If you're doing the workouts, you're burning the calories. If you're not doing the workouts, you're not burning the calories, right? I mean, it's a very specific thing that you're looking at. One guy just exited the top 10. That's true. That just happened, though. Another guy has never even threatened to be in the top 10. One guy is on a losing skid. That's true. Another guy openly said, I'm not even tough enough to walk out there. I mean, it's been a good year. Somewhere right along those lines. I mean, we are pulling up on a year since the Gordon fight. And whatever the injury was, it really doesn't make a bit of difference. If a guy says, I can't even go out there, I can't even walk out and try, I don't quite know how you're giving him a nudge over a guy that just left the top 10. And I haven't seen Tony have a big problem unless a guy was able to get on top of him and or stop his takedown. Right? One thing, when Tony did start to slow down, he started shooting a lot less. Now he starts trading a lot more. Even Tony in his best of times was very, very hittable. He would hit you back, he would kick you back, he'd move at weird angles. Eventually he would change elevation, come underneath, get you to the ground, and then that would change everything. Even when guys would get back up, they now have to deal with the threat of the takedown. The threat of the takedown is much more damning and daunting than the takedown itself. The takedown itself is this peaceful, glideful thing where you get brought down to the canvas. The threat of the takedown. And I just say that because when Tony quit wrestling and or started getting out wrestled, that's where the real problem was. I don't know that I see that with Paddy. I do see some positives with Paddy. I do understand that level of conditioning. I do understand that great cardio as a byproduct of weighing 900 pounds and having to get down to 155. I do understand that there's a lot of runs involved there. There's a lot of lung capacity there. But you've also got to understand, a guy being on a skid while being active is a much better situation than a guy sitting out. Period. A guy in the gym training, however you agree with it or you disagree with it, then walking out to competition after having weigh-ins, after having travels, after dealing with those nerves and emotions, versus a guy who's done nothing that involves exercise for 1 year. I mean, this isn't like a hard bet. It's a unique position. And the one thing I don't like about the position is I do think that Tony is going to beat Paddy the Baddy. And then that's going to buy him right into 3 more losses in a row. It does need to be a situation where if Tony wins, thank you and goodbye. If Tony loses, thank you and goodbye. I think that would make everybody have a little bit more ease with this. But make believing that Tony Ferguson, who just left the top 10, is going to get a jump put on him by a guy who's been sitting out a year, never claimed close, never even remarkably close, not even in the most corrupt ranking system on earth was he even considered for top 10 status. I think you need to keep that in mind.